Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this live briefing, More Than a Colon, How to Submit a Standout Program to the 2018 NASPA Annual Conference. My name is Jace Kirshner, and I'm an Assistant Director of Educational Programs at NASPA. I'm really pleased to be joined here by Kevin Bailey and Stephanie Gordon, who are going to talk with us about how to make a really great program for the NASPA Annual Conference.
Well, hey, Tiffany from University of North Texas, and let's see, who else is here? Yolanda from University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So please keep your names coming in there. My name is Stephanie Gordon. I'm the Vice President for Professional Development at NASPA, and I'm really excited to be joined by Kevin Bailey, who is our conference chair for the 2018 NASPA Annual Conference. Bailey, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for taking time on a Friday afternoon in the summer to get more information about how to submit a standout program for the 2018 annual NASPA conference. When I am not doing this, by day, I am the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs at UNC Charlotte.
Great. So we are going to be in Philadelphia for the 2018 NASPA Annual Conference, and I'm just trying to get my screen to work. There we go. So Bailey, why don't you take it away?
So what you see before you is the logo that we are using for the NASPA Annual Conference. If you didn't already know, it's our 100th anniversary. We will be in Philly, my hometown, on those dates in March. For those of you who have never been to Philly before, while we are there for business, while we are there for learning and engaging with colleagues, both new and old, certainly would be remiss if I didn't suggest to you that while you are in Philly, to take advantage of some of the things that the city has to offer, whether it's Independence Hall on the left, whether it's the Liberty Bell on the bottom, whether it is the Philadelphia Museum of Art in the center with the Rocky statue in the middle, or the bottom right, where we will be at the, that's the Reading Terminal, I think it is, Reading Terminal, across the street from the Convention Center where we'll be, and then certainly in the upper right, a lovely skyline view of the city of Philadelphia. So as you think about submitting a program for the 100th anniversary, first and foremost, there is no theme. So please do not send in program proposals that have anything to do with 100 ways of doing something, 100 takes on something. Please do not. There is no theme for the 2018 conference. But as you think about putting your thoughts together, there are 4 guiding principles that NASPA has that we as a conference committee are using to help frame what will go on in 2018. As you can see on the screen and hear my voice, the 4 guiding principles are integrity, innovation, inclusion, and inquiry. Now let me just take a moment to talk about each one of those briefly. Next slide, please.
It's moving. Hold on.
Okay, no worries. So the first one is integrity. And it says on the screen, committed to high moral principles, exhibiting authentic, honest, just, and ethical behavior. That's the general definition that we have of integrity. And then there are questions on the screen that may help you when you're thinking about a program that might be framed around integrity. So the second bullet says, how do we navigate and respond to campus policies and procedures that may directly conflict with personal narratives and identities? And certainly given what's going on our campuses today, given what's going on in the federal government, there's certainly been lots of conversations on some of our campus around these things. And so you might have something that you've done that fits with integrity and answers those questions. That question. Let me also say that these questions are not absolute. These are just things to generate some thinking. You may come up with some other ideas around integrity, but again, these questions are here just to get you thinking in that way. Next slide. Second guiding principle is innovation, continuously seeking improvement through new and creative approaches. And so again, as you think about your campuses and what you may be doing that is new and innovative, you might want to think of submitting something in the innovation realm, if you will. And so the second bullet says, what current practices are utilized ensuring student affairs profession stays relevant with the next generation of students? So there may be some creative ways that you are reimagining your division or reimagining your department or reimagining a particular program in light of the next generation of students that you want to share with your fellow NASPA colleagues. Next slide. Inclusion. Seeking ways to ensure access, voice, acknowledgement, opportunity, and participation at all levels. And so again, going back to my earlier conversation about what was going on some of our college campuses, certainly inclusion is at the fore of some of those things that are going on. And so if you look at the third bullet, it says, how do you define inclusion to ensure that there is space for all voices and perspectives to be valued and represented? Again, perhaps there's something unique you are doing in the way of free speech education. Perhaps there's something that you are doing with how you educate or train students or staff in your department, in your division, around these issues of inclusion that may be unique and something that you want to share. Last guiding principle is inquiry. Supporting research and scholarship to add to the knowledge base of the profession and ensure that data informs practice. And so again, don't necessarily think about this in terms of hardcore, full-blown research project with a hypothesis and that sort of stuff, although that is certainly welcome. But the first bullet says, how will student affairs research continue to inform and influence educational policy and change in higher education? And so what are you doing on your campuses as it relates to assessment? What are you doing on your campuses, again, as it relates to hardcore research that advances the profession, that shapes how we think about a particular practice and how the data that we've got from that research or that assessment informs your practice? So those are really the four guiding principles upon which we are using to go forward with the 2018 conference and program submissions. You can also think about professional competencies. And so as you see on the screen, there are about 10 competencies on the screen, and you can tie a program that you submit to one. Is it just one, or is it more than one, Stephanie?
You can do it to two.
Okay, up to two of the professional competencies that you see on the screen. Next slide. And so you've got competencies, you've got guiding principles, so you've got some sort of idea that you want to run with and want to shape and mold. The next question then is, so what type of program might I want to present based on the idea that I have? And so there are pre-conference workshops, and those happen before the conference begins, either on Saturday or on Sunday. They are either half-day or full-day pre-conference workshops. You have a poster session, which are those the 30-minute sessions, Stephanie? Are those in the
Those are actually posters where people can display their content areas and their research they're displayed in the exhibit hall, and folks will be able to share visual information about their sessions.
Okay. General interest sessions, which most of our attendees will go to. Those represent the bulk of the types of programs that are available at NASPA, the 75-minute sessions, some of which are sponsored by the various knowledge communities. Then you've got sponsored or virtual sessions, which are 50-minute sessions, as it says on the screen. SA Speaks, that's our version of a TED Talk. and those are set up in TED Talk-like fashion on a stage with a timed presentation from a particular speaker on a topic that they are well versed in. You've got scholarly paper sessions that are typically submitted by faculty members, not always, but those are more along the lines of some research or, again, scholarly paper that someone wants to share in terms of what they have found, what new thing that they have come across that they want to share with the association. And then the last one is innovation programming. And Stephanie, help me out with a good description.
Sure. So every year, the NASPA Annual Conference Committee, we have a great subcommittee on innovation programming that tries to think of different activities that they can do. And the goal really is that folks can submit innovative programs similar to the guiding principle of innovation to engage in a different type of program submission process, a different kind of presentation, not the traditional 50-minute sessions or not the essay speaks type, but this innovative programming option. And so that is a submission area that you can add to your program submission.
Okay. So those are types of programs.
Thanks so much, Bailey. I am going to get into the technical. So Bailey was sharing all of the content areas and the experience of what the 2018 conference committee has put together to say these are the questions that you want to be able to answer. And so now I get to get into the part that maybe many of you got on this webinar today to talk about around how do you actually get accepted to the NASPA Annual Conference. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what an effective program submission might look like and actually how to do it. I have some screenshots of the presentation, in the presentation of the program submission process, and I want to just make sure we walk through this, and then we'll have some time for questions, as you mentioned at the very beginning. So when you submit your proposal, you're going to want to make sure that you take a good hard look at those questions that are on the NASPA Annual Conference website. The integrity, innovation, and inclusion, and inquiry guiding principles are really important to how we frame and shape the content within the conference. You really want to have a solid foundation for what you're actually proposing. So we, as a committee, will be looking at all the programs to think, is there really good experience behind what you have to propose to present at the annual conference? We don't want to see a program that may have just say that I'm trying to create a program that might take place in the spring of 2018. No, we want to think about what is the data that you have on a program that maybe has 3 years of experience, or you have a really good solid year of something that has happened. And thinking about all of the background and history. We are a scholarly profession. We want to make sure that we have some information in that program that has research-based information, evidence-based information, as well as references if that's if things are based on some research that's out there. Adhering to the proposal submission guidelines is really a good opportunity to be able to make sure that you complete all the pieces of a conference program submission. And the only way your program will be reviewed is if your program is complete, when it has all the pieces put together. And this will make more sense as I go through the rest of the programs, submitting a program briefing. You want to also make sure that it's reflective of good writing practices. Please do not submit programs that have spelling errors or incomplete sentences. It's very important because part of the review process are your colleagues who also have scholarly research or practitioner backgrounds where they hope that you're taking the time to make sure that you are writing well and that you have spell checked everything to make sure that this is a really solid, well-written program. You also want to make sure that you have multiple perspectives from different institutions, a diversity of presenters, a diversity of areas of the country, lots of different aspects of having some diversity that is included in multiple ways. So maybe you might be presenting on student leadership, but you actually have 3 different presenters from 3 different types of institutions, maybe a community college, a small college, and a large institution, and you have 3 presenters who have very different perspectives on one particular topic. So that's a really good way to have a solid program that has a good chance of being accepted. I go on to the next very specific information about effective proposals within the program titles, abstracts, etc. So we have a limit on the number of characters within a program title. So as student affairs administrators, we tend to be very verbose, and one of the things that we really want to make sure is that you are very specific in your program title. In the NASPA Annual Conference program book, we do not add the abstracts in the printed program book, so your title has to be very specific. As Bailey said earlier, please don't say, we're going to have 100 ways to do this because it is the 100th anniversary conference. We really would love you to say that you want to say that there's an effective leadership practice in student activities with first-generation students. That title would be awesome. But if you say 100 ways to have that, we would likely not be interested in that program proposal. We really want to take a focused area on your program title. In your program abstract, again, you have to be very succinct and very specific. We only have a very short period of time or short amount of space for those abstracts. And really where we're going to get into the meat of your program is the program outline and the program description. This is where you're going to put your outline of the time that you're going to use to introduce your topic, the engagement opportunity where maybe it's 10 to 15 minutes you're going to do a presentation about your topic area, and then the last part of your session you're going to talk about how you engage the rest of the group in those participating in the session, in the conversation. And then you're going to want to describe what that program is about, the content, as I mentioned in the previous slide, what the solid foundation is for that program. All of that information needs to be in the program and outline description section. We then also want you to put the presenter information. You as the person who's submitting the program is going to be what we call the coordinating presenter. And then you'll add additional presenters into that program submission so that you can talk about who actually else would be part of your program. Again, I want to make sure that you know that we value multiple perspectives, multiple identities, multiple institutions, and multiple areas of the country or international participants in order to think about all the different ways you could be engaging in the content with your program. In order to do that, sometimes you don't know someone who has all of those characteristics. Maybe you don't know someone who lives in another state or works at a different type of institution. We actually do have a system that helps you find a place to match with someone who may have a very interesting topic that you also are interested in presenting on. We have a program called Presenter Match. It's a little bit like Match.com for presenting for the NASPA Annual Conference. You can log in, put in a profile, click on all of the things that you will be learning about in this live briefing. Say that what you're interested in presenting about. Write a short little abstract to say I'm interested in presenting on Greek life and engaging in diversity leadership training with Greek life, and then give a little snippet of what you're interested in and submit that. You can come back and match with people who might have the same information and same interests, and then you can connect with each other and submit a program together by the September deadline. That presenter match is live right now, so you can go on to the NASPA Annual Conference website to find presenter match. If you just search in the search bar, you'll find it. And update your profile. You can go and check the tool as often as you like. It does not send you a direct email like Match.com does on matching, but you can go back to that tool as many times as you like and get the information of people who have matched with you. We actually have had several successes of folks who've met each other and then presented together at the NASPA Annual Conference, so it would be a great opportunity for you to get to know some more folks. So some basics about the online submission process. We have an online submission for all program types, and our deadline is September 1st, 2017, so just before Labor Day weekend. You can go to the NASPA engagement page from the NASPA website, or you can click right into the submission process on the conference2018.naspa.org website. I'm going to show you a screenshot of that in just a moment. And the next couple of things are really important just to think about. When you're submitting your program for the NASPA Annual Conference, it's really about building a program. When you click on the submission link, you're actually going to click on the submission link and create a profile. And then you have the opportunity to start and build each piece of the program, and you can leave and come back to it. You can edit it all the way up to the September 1st deadline. So I'll show you a little bit about this as we go through the presentation, but it's important to think about this as an opportunity to log in and start building a program within the database that we have. And then there's not an actual submit button at the end. Because once you complete, you're just going to make sure that all the checkboxes are checked off, and as long as you're complete, your program will be reviewed. And I'll show you a little bit more about that in a moment. You'll also get a self-service confirmation of your submission, so I'll show you that as well. And as you click through the process, you can send an email to yourself at any time just to see what's actually being held in our database. So when you click to the NASPA conference website, this is the homepage of the conference website. As you can see up here, this conference 2018.naspa.org is the homepage. On the homepage during this time period, you can just click right here and click Submit Programs or Request Meeting Space, and that will take you to the homepage to be able to log in. And you do not need to be a NASPA member in order to do this, but you will need to have a profile. So you can, if you are a NASPA member, you can submit a program through your NASPA member profile. But if you're not a NASPA member, you will want to create a new guest account in order to submit a program. A couple of points about this. If you are currently a NASPA member and will remain a NASPA member throughout the conference experience, you're all set. If you are the coordinating presenter and you're not a NASPA member, if your program gets accepted, you must become a NASPA member as the coordinating presenter, and you must register for the NASPA Annual Conference. Those are a couple of really important points. You can go through the whole submission process and not be a NASPA member, but if you are the coordinating presenter, you must be a NASPA member in order to present at the NASPA Annual Conference. Your additional presenters do not necessarily have to be NASPA members, although we encourage it. You can just be, your other presenters can actually just be registered for the conference, so that's an important note to take. So as I mentioned, you'll create your programs, and then you'll log into the NASPA engagement portal, and that's where you'll end up at this page, which basically shows you how to create a new program. And for the 2018 conference, you'll see some directions up here. In the live version, these are just some screenshots that have some deadline dates, etc. But at the bottom of this down here, you'll see it has a couple of different areas here: add new and log out. When you add new, that'll actually bring you to a place where it'll show you a title and a bunch of red check marks. But you're going to add a new program, and the next thing it'll take you to is this program type. Bailey went through all the different program types that you can do. You can click on a pre-conference program. It'll ask you whether or not it will actually, you can click on pre-conference program half day if you just want a 3-hour workshop, a 6-hour workshop, or then these general interest sessions, essay speaks, poster sessions, scholarly papers, and constituent group sponsored. So this is where the knowledge community and the other sponsored groups live. Once you select your program type, it actually brings you back to that home page where you have the add new and log out. You might remember that from the earlier screenshot. And this is what I was talking about earlier, where there are a bunch of different checkboxes at the bottom, and this is where you're going to build your program. You have yet to add your program title here, so that's one of the things you can see right down here in program title. That's where you would actually click this word title, and you can change your title. So you've selected your program type. You want to go in and make sure that all the rest of these little checkboxes, X boxes, actually change to check boxes in green in order to be able to be complete with your program. You're going to click on each one of these little words down here below that'll bring you to these next few pages that I'll show you. You'll click on title, and that's where it'll bring you to this page where you'd enter your title. And as I mentioned earlier, it's about 150 characters, so that's where you'll enter your program title. The next one, you'll do your presenters. You'll click on this little NASPA member ID search, and even if your additional presenters are in the database, you'll click this little ID search. It'll pop up a little box, and you can find people. So if I were to type in Bailey's name here and click member ID search, it'll actually show me Bailey, and it'll populate this for me. So you don't even need to know all of the position, title, and institution and everything. It'll populate this for you. If you don't have any additional presenters, if you are the single person presenting, but remember, we really like multiple perspectives. However, if you are the single person presenting, you want to check this box that says no additional presenters, because that allows you to eventually have that little green checkbox come on that main page. As Bailey mentioned earlier, we have the 4 guiding principles, and you would want to select one of the guiding principles because this is where we will continue to add this into the program submission process for the 2018 conference. Excuse me. You're going to then want to enter your program abstract. And if you look at this area, there's a little corner down here. You can open this box up and it'll get bigger. So you'll want to enter this program abstract in here, and it's a 75-word abstract that you'll want to enter in order to keep. And every time you click submit, that means it's entering it into our database. So once you go back to that main page, you'll see that those checkboxes start to complete once you enter some information in these pages. The program description and outline section is where I mentioned that you're going to put the meat of the program, the outline, the schedule. You can see the goals of the presentation, a description that provides detailed information about your program. Evidence of the conceptual framework for this, which might include research, relevant experience, appropriate theory, and references. This is really important. These directions ahead of this is where really what we want you to fill out. Every program requires some sort of learning outcome, so we really want to make sure that you're focused on the topic that you are presenting, but also that there's a learning outcome that a participant would want to see as and experience as they participate in your program. If you don't know how to if you don't know how to write a learning outcome, we actually have some links within here that you can click on and share with others about how to write a learning outcome. You'll notice that there's also some areas where we ask you for professional competency areas or target groups, which means that we are looking to see if you have some interest in pointing your content toward a particular person or a particular entity. And so when we get to content areas and target groups and institutional types, you'll want to click on who you think your program is most appropriate for. Don't click on who you want to come to your program. You want to make sure you click the program content, who it is most appropriate for. So I know that you may want a Vice President for Student Affairs to attend, but if the content isn't specific toward a Vice President for Student Affairs, you may want to actually click to the mid-level or senior level professionals who would be actually very interested in the topic that you would want to have. The same thing for the type of community that you're interested in submitting for. So if your program is specific to small colleges and universities, you'll want to make sure you click on that small college and universities, click submit, and that'll help you fill and complete your program. All right. Next, this is where the background and familiarity of programs of your presenters are. We don't want your full CV. We just want a little bit of information about you in the program submission process, you and all of the other presenters. It's really important to note that the NASPA Annual Conference review process is not a blind review, which basically means that you, as the presenter, your information would be available to the people who are reviewing your program. So the reviewers are matched based on the content areas, the target group, and all the other things that you just completed within your program. So if Bailey were to review my program and I had clicked on I'm interested in Greek life and leadership, or I'm interested in housing, and Bailey also clicked on Greek life and leadership and housing, most likely if he's interested in reviewing programs for that area, he would be matched to my program. Bailey will be able to see that I'm the presenter, but when you get your review comments and information following the review process, you would not know that Bailey actually was the reviewer of your program. So the reviewers are blind in that you would never see the person's name or information that reviewed your program, but you will receive the content afterwards. It's just important to note that the presenters are available to the reviewers. We do have an AV requirement. It's very important to note that internet access is not guaranteed and not provided for the NASPA Annual Conference. You must bring your own laptop, and that every single one of the rooms will have an LCD projector and the cords available, but you'll want to bring your own laptop and make sure that you have any other information that you need if you're doing something special with audiovisual. We'll also have audiovisual, and we also have audio, so if you are going to play a video or do any other sound within the presentation, we will have that. Another piece that we ask folks to do in this one is to ask if you're willing to be part of the virtual ticket or recorded for our archives. And this is where we'd ask you to say yes or no if you would be willing to be recorded. Again, always hit submit, and that's where it will get entered into our database. The final area that is very important to complete, while it may seem silly, the notes and special requests. If you do not have any other notes or special requests, you want to make sure to click off that box that says no special requests, because again, I'll show you in a moment what a completed program looks like, but everything needs to have something in it. So then you'll hit submit again, and you'll get to something like this, which basically means that I submitted my program of how to submit a program, and then I've completed every single one of these little things. If you remember, it had red X's across the top here, and now I've completed my program type, my title, I've added all the different pieces in, and it has complete check boxes over it. What I would do then is send myself, and you click on that, send myself an email confirmation, and I can get an email that the database will send me that shows exactly what I provided to the conference committee for my program submission. One of the important parts of this is also to make sure that you make NASPA at NASPA.org a trusted email source in order to make sure you get all the NASPA conference communications. Because when you get that email confirmation of everything that's in the database, that's also the emails that will be coming to you should your program be accepted. It will also provide information to you if your program was not selected, and all of the review information about why. So speaking of reviewing, one of the things that is important also to know is that we do have an online review process. We do a call for reviewers in August, and those reviewers complete an online questionnaire. And as I mentioned earlier, we match the programs and the reviewer interests and reviewer understanding of programs information in order to make sure that we have people who know what they're talking about to review your content of your program. The pre-conference workshops are reviewed from September 9th to September 23rd in a very short period of time, because we try to get all of our pre-conference workshops up and online by October 1st, which is when our hotel and registration opens for hotel reservations. Our program review time for the rest of the programs is basically September 12th through October 3rd. We have over 1,800 reviewers that we need for our 2,000 programs or so that are submitted for the NASPA Annual Conference. Each reviewer will receive at least 8 programs to review, and they have about a 3-week time to review those 8 programs. In those 8 programs, it's going to take about 20 to 30 minutes to review each one of those programs if you do it right. You can both review and submit programs, and no, we won't allow you to review your own program. But we will ask you lots of questions or to match you with other programs that you can review and critique for the NASPA Annual Conference as well. Each program will be reviewed a minimum of 5 or 6 times online either by the process that's online or by the program committee. And as I mentioned before, reviewers' comments will be shared with the coordinating presenters with no identified information. So I would never know that Bailey reviewed my program, and neither will you know the people who review your programs. The 2018 Conference Committee, which Bailey leads, meets in October in Washington, D.C. to decide the conference programs, and we sit in a room for about 3 days and go through the 2,000 programs, and we end up accepting around 500 to 600 programs. So when you hear those numbers, you know it's very competitive to be accepted into the program. A couple of notes: we also only allow people to present a maximum of 3 times during the NASPA Annual Conference from the Monday through Wednesday programs. So if you submit 20 programs, or let's be more realistic, around 6 programs to be reviewed, it's highly unlikely that all 6 of your programs will be accepted. If you are really good and all your programs are rated very highly, you may get a maximum of 3 programs to submit to present during the NASPA Annual Conference. I think a couple of other more important notes is that as you think about your program submissions, it's important to keep the content in mind, which is most important. Programs that are reviewed very highly aren't always accepted. That's another thing to note, because we really want a well-rounded program. It means that all the programs around, let's again pick on leadership. If we had all programs that rated really, really highly on leadership, the NASPA Annual Conference would be more of a leadership conference than a well-rounded student affairs professional organization conference. So we really look at the best of lots of different content areas. So you shouldn't be surprised that if you get feedback that your program was really, really good, but it was still rejected, it also could mean that your program was just one of many really good programs that were not able to be accepted just because we don't have enough space in the NASPA Annual Conference experience. So that's basically the information that I have to provide for you today, but I know that we have some time for questions. And I know Bailey and I are willing to answer any of them, whether it be about the content, which Bailey can certainly talk about with some of the questions, or we'd love to hear from you if you have some questions. If you have it, I'm sure others within the organization or in the webinar right now, I'm sorry, live briefing, have right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Jace to manage some of these questions.
Yeah, sure. We're still waiting for you all just to get them in. Again, if you need to refresher, you can open up the questions box by clicking on the arrow next to the word questions and go ahead and type them in. I think, Bailey, you might have had one to start us off just so we can give some people some time to get their questions in.
Yes, while you are formulating your questions, I would pose this one to Stephanie. Given your tenure with NASPA, 14 years, and your familiarity with this process over all of those, if not most of those years, what have you seen that you can provide as a tip or a caution for our audience in relationship to submitting a program? Sorry.
Sure. So I think a couple of tips. I would definitely use the presenter match. I have seen last year, I think there was around 20 matches that actually got accepted to the NASPA Annual Conference for San Antonio. I think the opportunity to submit an idea that you might have in the presenter match to be able to match with other folks around the country or around the world who might be interested in presenting around the same topic is really cool. The other thing that would be important to note is that it really should take the time that you need to review and look at your program on several levels. Don't just submit a program that you've submitted in the past to other conferences. Make sure to read through your program. You could even type it up in a Word document before you submit it. You have plenty of time between now, it's only July, between now and the submission deadline to really create a solid program. Meet with some of your colleagues who might be presenting with you, whether they're right around your campus or whether they're across the country from friends of yours from other areas. Take some time, really think about the content that we need. We need some evidence-based information, some theory, some information that that the program or service or overarching research that you're presenting has good experience and has a solid foundation. And then make sure you read it over again. I think that a lot of programs have been rejected because of the amount of programs we get, because they haven't spelled things right, they haven't engaged in the process as we have recommended, and they end up being rejected because of some small things. But we really need all of y'all to be really smart on your submission process.
Good. Okay.
We have had a question that's come in, and somebody's asked, may you give an example of an innovative program? Would Pechakucha be an example, for example, I think is another type of program style potentially.
Mm-hmm. Tiffany, that's a great question. Yes, that would be a great example of an innovative program. The other thing is thinking about, even if it's a 50-minute session, even if you submit under a 50-minute interest session time block, a general interest or within the other knowledge community sponsored areas, that you would be able to present in a different way than just putting up a PowerPoint and speaking in front of the conference room. Thinking about the opportunity of engaging the community in a different way, or taking that 50 minutes and having 4 of you do a Pechakucha across the 50 minutes. That would be a great way of giving information in a different way within an innovative program.
Great. I actually have, I don't know, this isn't exactly a follow-up to that, but you kind of touched on this a bit. I know that one of the things that my experience from doing other conferences, the feedback that some people get is this feels like a show and tell, or like this is a show and tell and I wanted it to go deeper. What can people do to avoid that pitfall of having their presentation, or even in the course of putting together the program proposal, making sure that it's not just a show and tell type of presentation?
That's a great question, Jace. As you think about presenting your session, the amount of time that you spend talking about your particular program that you do at your particular institution should be very short. The time that you should be thinking about spending is the time that you should be talking about how you developed it, what are some of the assessments that you engaged with it, how did other people react to it, what are the things that made it very specific to the content development, because it's hard to put it in context to, if I work at a large public university in the middle of Kansas, I may not be able to implement things the same way in a small private institution in the center of Boston. And so how do we think about the content and the assessment process that developed within that content area, rather than just, here's how we did this particular program at this particular institution and engaged these maybe types of people who may not necessarily live or work or be in that particular institution. So thinking about the process rather than just specifically about your particular program or service. Bailey, do you have any other thoughts about that?
And I'd also say that you think about things that you have done and that you've tested or assessed, and not things that you are thinking about doing, or this is your first semester of implementation, without any sort of feedback to tell the audience, this is where we started, but because of the assessment data, we already know that for next year or next cycle or next go round, this is what we know, this is what we're going to change. And so I think that's also helpful for the audience members, because again, remember, people are coming to gain information about a variety of things so they can take that information back to their campuses, by and large. And so they've got to have something, tangible. So if they can't get to you after your program session is over, do they have enough information to then go back to their campuses and start to try to replicate or emulate what you've done in your campus? So that's what I think about.
Another question related to content, and it's only because I'm thinking about last year we had a presidential election. There was a lot of things that transpired between when we had the program submission process occur and then when the actual annual conference took place. So there were people who were, forecasting what could happen or what couldn't happen, and then, there are a lot of policy changes and things that we're now trying to stay abreast of, and obviously those might be things that people want to put program submissions towards. So I guess thinking about how do you submit a program that may be very topical related to current events that are going on and still haven't remained relevant when things could potentially shift over the next several months as we get up to the annual conference.
That's a great question, Jace. I think one of the pieces that's most important is to know that there are some changes that can happen to a program between the time that it's accepted until the time of presentation. And if it pertains to things that are happening in politics and policy, in things even on your campus, it's important to note within the program content in the outline description area that there will be things that you will evolve based on the next few months of X, Y, and Z, whatever it might be, if it's in the town-gown relations or if there is pending legislation within your area. I think it's important to note within that you as the presenter would plan to do some changes to your program proposal based on what happens in the next few months. There are also, as a conference committee, we also save a few programs on the side that we spots in order to create some programs based on current events and things that might be happening between October, when we accept all of the programs, and March, when we actually have the NASPA Annual Conference. I want to just also point out a couple of other things. We talked most specifically about the general programs when we're submitting information for those general programs that have usually the 50-minute sessions, which has concurrence that go up against them. But Bailey talked about a few other program types, and in particular, I think it's important to note that if you are a current graduate student or if you're a faculty member doing work that's unique and new or unique research, these scholarly paper sessions are a really great opportunity to submit an abstract for a paper that you might be writing, or a research paper that you might be writing, and you submit that during the September time period. It's reviewed, and then you have until about the middle of February to write the paper and then get feedback on it from colleagues who would be your discussants and the chairs of those scholarly paper sessions. So if you are doing some current research, if you're have some really amazing research plan and want to write a paper that can get critiqued and reviewed for the NASPA during the NASPA Annual Conference, that's a really great program type to submit for. I'd add a couple of other things around the other program types. If you have an interest in getting up and doing a TED Talks, it's a great opportunity to submit something for SA Speaks. And for SA Speaks, we ask you to write a little abstract, but we also ask you to submit a video of yourself talking about what content you might be doing so that you can be reviewed and accepted. And then we have coaches who will help you through that process. The other conference program submission types really focus on the type of constituent group that you might submit under. So we have 33 knowledge communities, and each knowledge community can sponsor up to 3 different programs. So that means that if you are doing some programs on assessment, as Bailey was talking about earlier, the assessment, research, and evaluation knowledge community could actually sponsor your program. So it's an opportunity to both be reviewed by people who have specific experience in a content area, in this case assessment, and they could actually sponsor your program. It's highlighted in different ways, and it's also shared with multiple individuals who hope that they would then attend your conference session. So there are a bunch of different program ways to submit. There's a bunch of different program types. Pre-conference workshops really are an opportunity to dig in and get some hands-on experience over a longer period of time. And I know that there's lots of questions and lots of ways to present programs, but we do hope that you submit for the 2018 NASPA Annual Conference because it seems like it's going to be a great time in Philly.
Yeah, and so there's no other questions that have come in. So I don't know if Stephanie and Ken, if you have any last kind of thoughts you want to leave us with. You sound like you sort of wrapped us up there, Stephanie. But if there's anything else you want to share right now.
I don't have anything else, Bailey.
I don't either.
All right. Well, in that case, I'm just going to say thank you all so much for joining us today. If you have any other questions, you see some emails up there on your screen that you can write to any of these folks, and we'll be happy to point you in the right direction if it's about program proposals or anything else related to the NASPA Annual Conference. We really hope that you'll consider submitting a proposal. That's the way that we build the conference out. Your ideas, your experiences, these are the things that make the conference live and breathe. So please do that, and otherwise we hope to see you in Philly. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.